Welcome to the first episode of the Red Zone Report Fantasy Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Nick Faber, and my boy, John Valencia. What's up, John?
What's going on, Nick? Happy to be here. As I said before, the boys are back in town. We're back and ready to get at it.
I love it, dude. If any of you haven't known or doesn't know, John and I used to do a podcast for the AAF before it was unfortunately put 6 feet under. It was tough. It was a tough day for us. It's been a tough couple months. We're just now finally able to get back in front of the screen and start getting some recording going. We're switching, though. We're going from the AAF. We're going to the Fantasy Podcast. So, John, today what we're doing is a 12-team, just us, first-round mock draft. We're going to go back and forth. I'll start with the first pick. John, you'll have the second pick. I'll have third, so on and so forth. We'll talk about the players and see who we leave out and see who gets the snub at the end. So are you excited? You ready?
I'm excited. It's actually my first mock draft of the season, and lo and behold, it's a 2-man mock draft, so we'll see how this goes.
This will be fun. This will be fun for sure. We don't have a lot of time. We're going to try to keep this 45 minutes and under. We're going to start right out with the number one pick, and there's a lot of debate right now, right? That it seems like Saquon was the number one guy for a long time, and then the Giants just did nothing in the draft to help him, in my opinion. They did sign a few offensive linemen throughout the offseason that may help them out, but it still scares me with the Giants. Christian McCaffrey was the number one running back last year in PPR points. I still don't have him ranked as the number one. So with the first pick, my boy, I cannot talk enough about Ezekiel Elliott. He's the man. He's got a great offense. With Cooper there all 16 games, Dak should be able to spread that offense out even more, be able to open up holes for Zeke. Their offensive line is by far the number one offensive line in the entire NFL. You can come at me with any other team. I guarantee it will not be as good as the Dallas Cowboys are putting out there. So there's no reason why Zeke shouldn't be the number one pick in all formats, standard PPR, half-point PPR. They are going to score points, which gets him the availability of getting into the red zone. It gives him the chance of scoring a lot of touchdowns. We know that they like to funnel the offense right through Zeke. So I'm all in on Zeke. With my number one pick, I'm taking Zeke. Do you got anything to say about Zeke, John?
I mean, you really can't go wrong with any of these three guys you mentioned. With Zeke, I just have him a little bit lower than McCaffrey and Barkley, just because I think the pass catching volume is there more so for McCaffrey and Barkley, especially in PPR leagues. But with that being said, I was really surprised to see that Zeke caught 77 passes last year, which is pretty crazy. We all knew about his pass catching ability coming out, but I never thought that he would have that much volume in that area. But with Amari Cooper there for a full year, I kind of think that will dwindle a little bit, although I could still see him going for like 50 catches or so. But still, you can't go wrong with him at the first overall pick.
You're right, and you can't. And that is why I'm taking Zeke a little bit, is because he did show that he has the ability to catch the ball and do it a numerous amount of times. It does scare me, you're right, with Cooper being there 60 games. Plus, not to say that Jason Witten is going to be a huge impact on the offense. He, though, may take away a lot of the safety throws that Zeke would have got last year. It's now going to go back to Jason Witten because Dak had no confidence in his tight ends. So that could scare me a little bit, but it doesn't scare me enough for me to pass on Zeke with the number one pick. But you're right. It's something to watch out for. And what we're doing is a PPR, just so everyone's aware. And in a PPR, maybe Christian, maybe Barkley is a little bit higher than Zeke, as John said that he has. But for me, I got Zeke. So with the number one pick, we're going with Zeke. But that leads us to the second pick. John, who are you taking?
I was hoping you would go McCaffrey or Barkley at 1 just to make this a little bit easier on me. I'm going to just go with McCaffrey here, 1.2, though. RB3 last year, according to Fantasy Pros, is what I was looking at before. I know you said RB1 earlier. Regardless, he's a stud. He's never off the field. I know this isn't fantasy relevant, but I saw on Twitter the other day, he led all running backs in pass blocking snaps, which is pretty absurd when you take into account the volume. I mean, he had over, 100 catches last year, 107 catches, which led all running backs. Love his role on that team. Coming into the league, when they drafted him 8th overall, I was really concerned about him going to Carolina. I didn't know how they would implement him into their offense, but they've done it really well, especially last year, that breakout season. He has the guaranteed volume, and his role on the offense is what you want in your stud fantasy players. So McCaffrey is the guy for me at 1.2.
I love Christian McCaffrey, and I loved him last year. I was telling everyone last year, make sure you get him on your team. He was going early second round, and I was telling everyone, reach for him. Reach for him over David Johnson. Reach for him over a lot of these players. And it turned out to be it turned out good. McCaffrey is a stud, and what you brought up is amazing. It's not fantasy relevant, but it doesn't matter because it's football relevant, which means that you get playing time. When you can pass block for Cam Newton or for whoever your quarterback is, you're going to get playing time. I don't care if you're Peyton Barber. I don't care if you're Justin Bieber. If you can pass block, you're going to be playing in the NFL because that's one of the biggest things to do as a running back that gets overlooked. We saw it and we've talked about it multiple times with so many running backs that have the athletic talent, right? They have the ability to be a running back one, a number one running back in fantasy, but they just can't protect their quarterback, so they don't see the playing time. McCaffrey's got no one behind him. Dude, it's all McCaffrey. That volume is going to be intense. So I agree. I like Christian there at the second pick. That's a really good one, especially too because Carolina scores, man. Carolina scores a lot of points, and in the division they're in, that whole division, especially with Bruce Arians going to Tampa Bay, like that whole division is going to be putting up 30, 40 points a game. So Carolina has to compete, you know. But let's get on with a third pick. So we're looking here so far to recap. Zeke 1, Christian McCaffrey 2. So, you know, some of the best players out there, we'd have Nuke, we'd have Barkley, we'd have Kamara, Gurley, Gordon. Those are pretty much your top players right now. And as everyone wants Barkley, and he should be the number one, everyone's saying he should be the number 2. I'm not going to get him. With the third pick, I'm taking Alvin Kamara. I love the Saints this year. I love the Saints, man. Like, everyone's nervous. Breeze ended up getting a noodle arm towards the latter half of the year last year, and they weren't producing the offense that we saw in the very beginning. But in the first 4 games, Alvin Kamara was a beast. Before Ingram came back, Alvin Kamara was one of the top running backs, maybe the number one running back. I haven't looked up those stats, but he was a beast. Regardless, he was the man. And now that Ingram is in Baltimore, sure, they signed Latavius Murray. Sure, they went out and got Ozigbo from undrafted free agent, but there's no one that's going to be sitting there battling Kamara. If he plays 16 games, he is going to be one of the top 3 running backs. For me, it's Zeke, Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, my 1, 2, and 3 ranked running backs in PPR leagues for my May rankings. So for me to see Kamara sitting there in the third pick, I'll gladly take him, especially over Saquon. And you guys can go love Saquon. Sure, that's great. He'll get the volume too. But his offensive line is piss poor. His offense is piss poor. His quarterback won't be able to throw the ball to open up holes for him. He'll get the dump down passes. He'll get the receptions. I'm not saying he's not, a running back, the 5th running back or worse. He's a top 4 running back. But for me, give me Kamara. You got anything to say about that, John?
I see where you're coming from. You definitely want to go with players who come from an established offense. And especially in the Saints case, I mean, that's probably the most established fantasy offense you're going to find.
Right. Thank you.
And their volume, it's kind of dropped off in the past couple of years. As you said, Drew Brees, he hasn't been like throwing 500, 600 passes like he was in past years, but they're still efficient. And Kamara, especially when he touches the ball, whether it's running it or catching it, he's making big plays, 30 touchdowns in 2 years to start his career. He's going to produce big time. But if I'm sitting here at 4, I am overjoyed with Saquon Barkley still on the board. For me, he's my second ranked player this year coming into the draft. But RB2 last year, over 2,000 total yards, 91 catches. As you said, that offense is terrible, which is really where you would differentiate Kamara to Barkley, is because Kamara obviously comes from that offense. He's going to score points. And while the Giants may not score many points this year, they very well could have a bottom 5, bottom 10 offense. Barkley is going to produce. Even last year, he started the season. I believe it was like the first 8 weeks or so. He was under 4 yards per carry, and everyone was concerned about that. But he still finished the year at 5 yards per carry with he put a volume. So this is a guy I think is just going to get better. They don't really have depth behind Barkley either. It's Wayne Gallman, and I don't even know who else they have in that backfield. But Barkley at 1.4, I think, is probably the best value pick so far in the early goings of this draft.
I mean, you're right. You can't be wrong. Barkley at 104 is a great. If anyone's sitting there with the 4th pick and Barkley's on the board, you pound the table for him, right? You get him. Like that's obviously understood. One big thing that scares me about Barkley though is what if the Giants start out 0-4, 0-5? All right, they're just not winning. Now they're benching Eli and they're putting Daniel Jones in, and Daniel Jones is just kind of struggling to get the NFL grasp. Like I still don't understand that draft pick, but regardless of that, like, it scares me, right? So they're off. So what if Barkley has kind of a lingering hamstring injury and the Giants are 0-5? Do they continue to pound the ball with Saquon, or do they maybe let him rest for 3 or 4 weeks, maybe the rest of the season, kind of maybe, I don't want to say tank the season. I'm not saying the Giants would tank, but maybe just kind of set out not their A squad and try to get one of those top draft picks last year or next year to maybe trade and keep going. Like they did a lot of good in the draft this year and kind of building up their defense, their secondary. The offense was kind of overlooked. So, like, that's something that scares me about Barkley. And I'm not saying that anyone else should think about that. That's just kind of my gut feeling. And something else to think about with Barkley, and especially in comparison to Kamara, when you look at Pat Shurmur and you look at Sean Payton, which coach do you want to have a running back for? Like, for me, I know Sean Payton's going to do whatever he can to get Kamara the ball in every which way. It seems like for me, for Pat Shurmur, Barkley's going to get the ball up the middle in the A gap and the B gap, and they're just going to have him run the ball. He's going to be kind of your bell cow running back, where Kamara's going to be more scat. He's going to be used in the slot. He's going to be used wherever and wherever. They're going to have Taysom Hill at quarterback, and they're going to put Kamara next to him. The Giants are just too high school for me. They're too plain. I can't get on board with it. So that's why I would leave Barkley all the time. But get him at 4, it's a hell of a pick, man. It's a hell of a pick. Good value. But let's move on. Those are going to be the top 4 players pretty much in every draft. So now we're going to start having some fun. Now let's start talking about the guys.
That's the fun part.
Yeah, now the fun part. Exactly. All right. So 5th pick, we've seen 4 running backs go. You're still looking at, Gurley, Gordon, Connor, Johnson, Mixon, Bell, maybe Nuke, Michael Thomas, Davante Adams, Julio Jones. There's a lot of good players out right now. And this is a scary pick. 5 through 8, you don't want to this can make or break your season. So it's hard. It's hard to go with Gurley. Are we going to see what we saw at the end of last year? Is it going to be the Darrell Henderson show? Is it not even going to be Gurley? Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be healthy enough to get 250 or 350 touches this year, receptions and runs? It's scary. Is Gordon even going to be like a 20-down running back? Like he should be. But Austin Eckler showed that he could do a lot of stuff, and so did Justin Jackson when he came in last year. Like you can't forget about him. James Conner has why am I drawing who is their backup running back?
Jalen Samuels?
Jalen Samuels, thank you. Jalen Samuels showed that he could be all right last year, and they went and drafted Benny Snell. But of all those running backs, I kind of like Connor the most. However, I'm not going to draft any running backs, and I can't pass up on Nuke at the 5th pick. Look, I don't want to swear, I was about to, but the MFer is quarterback proof. I don't care. But it doesn't even matter because you got Watson out there, and Watson can throw the ball. If Will Fuller plays 16 games this year, that might take away a little bit from Nuke. Or that could only help Nuke out. That could legitimately become Nuke's best friend having Will there for the whole 16 games. So I'm gonna overpass the running backs that we have left, and I'm gonna take the number 1 wide receiver, consensus number 1 wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins with the 5th pick. Anything to say about that, John?
I like it. I was wondering when the wide receivers are going to go off the board. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely the wide receiver 1 right now. As you said, quarterback proof. 2017 when Watson went down for the year. He still finished that season as, I think, wide receiver 4 is what I have written down. So yeah, definitely quarterback proof. This is a stud. Just overly productive, exceeds expectations, I think, every single year. And I think it's good that he's finally getting the recognition that he deserves. You just made this pick a lot harder for me, though.
But it seems like a trend throughout this show. I keep making these picks harder for you.
Exactly. I mean, that's how drafts go. So it's definitely a good exercise.
Exactly.
Here.
When you're in a draft, you got to be able to think on your feet. You got to get ready. This is perfect. It's perfect test right here.
So as the clock winds down here for me, I think even despite what you just said about Todd Gurley, I just don't see. I can't pass him up. I think at this stage in the draft, I think these workhorse running backs are so valuable. Because there's going to be a huge drop-off probably after the first 6 or 7 are taken. There's going to be a big drop-off. So I think if you're drafting this early, especially in the middle of the round, you should definitely go for one. So Todd Gurley, I know the inexplicable cut to his workload last year was mind-boggling. No one knew what was going on with that. And then they draft Darrell Henderson in the 3rd round, as you say. So that makes the situation a little bit even more bleak. So this is probably the most risky pick to this point. But just everything we've seen so far from Todd Gurley, he's just been insanely productive, RB1 the past 2 seasons, and he's just a stud. I really don't know what to make of last year, how CJ Anderson kind of took over, especially during the playoffs too. I just have to think he wasn't 100%, which is always seems to be a concern with Todd Gurley, but he's just too good, I think. And the volume should be there. I think they'll definitely work in Darrell Henderson into the mix, but especially starting out the year, I think Todd Gurley's just going to go off and kind of everyone's going to forget about that cut he had to his workload last season.
Yeah, you've been getting a lot of the value. You know, before this, I would have said Barkley best value at 4, but Gurley best value maybe at 6 right there. Like, he legitimately is a running back 1 2 years in a row. But the worries, like, you're just so worried drafting him with like this high of a pick. You know, your heart's racing. Like I just said, this pick can make or break your team. And if Gurley all of a sudden, for some reason, just is still not healthy and is not getting the workload that we're used to, it could break the team. But if it's just the Gurley that we've seen for the last 2 or 3 of the last 4 years, that's another running back 1. You just got the 6th pick. You got him as the 5th running back off the board, and he could legitimately be the number 1 running back. I mean, the LA offense is stacked, right? When we talk about you wanting to get someone from a high-scoring offense, this is it. This is the guy. Like, LA Rams score a lot of points. Sean McVay knows how to score points. He, again, when I talked about Peyton or Shermer, not Peyton, but McVay is one of those coaches that you want people on that team because he will make sure that everyone gets their fair share, their slice of the pie. And the Rams are just a very good team. Gurley's a very good running back. But why? What happened last year? Like,
I'm just trying to think, has there ever been such a highly touted fantasy stud that's entering the year with so many red flags? But I don't know. I can't. It's a really weird situation.
Le'Veon Bell, when he was holding out, you know, like that was like, it was like people were so scared to take him. You know, it was like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. Zeke, a couple years ago, before the suspension was actually handed down, like those are, you know, and he got suspended for 6 games. That hurt. You know what I mean? That's time right there. That's time. 6th pick over. We could talk about Gurley all day. Let's turn that off and let's get to the 7th pick. That was a good pick, John. Let's get the 7th pick. Now, man, running backs are getting scarce. You know, if you're drafting the 7th spot, you've seen 5 running backs go, 1 wide receiver. You're looking at David Johnson, James Conner, Joe Mixon, Le'Veon Bell, Josh Jacobs, Sony Michel, Kerryon Johnson, Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones. A lot of these running backs still out there. But we're playing PPR leagues right now. Give me the man who caught damn near every single pass that Drew Brees threw to him last year. Drew Brees could close his eyes, throw the ball to Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas could have 4 alligators on his left leg and 6 cheetahs on his right leg, and he'll still make that catch because Michael Thomas is the freaking man. I put out a tweet not too long ago that really pissed off a lot of the Atlanta Falcons fans. I do apologize, Falcon fans, but in fantasy regards, I put I'd take Michael Thomas over Nuke, over Julio, over Davante Adams, over everyone. Now, obviously, in this draft, I did draft Nuke a little bit high. I don't need to be ruffling too many feathers for the 2nd day in a row. But Michael Thomas is legitimately one of the best wide receivers in the league when it comes to hands, right? If you're playing in a half-point PPR, maybe this changes. But if you're in a PPR league, Michael Thomas catches every ball thrown to him. Traquan Smith is a good wide receiver. Ted Ginn is a good wide receiver. Jared Cook is a good tight end. But none of those guys are going to see a ton of volume. None of them. Kamara is going to be the only one that eats into Michael Thomas's receptions more than anyone, in my opinion. And that's why I was so high on Kamara. I'm so high on the Saints offense this year. I'm predicting him to get to the Super Bowl this year. And so when it comes to drafting, I'm going to be fully on board with these top 2 guys from the Saints. So again, if you didn't catch that, the 7th pick in this mock draft is Michael Thomas because he is a stud. The Saints are studs, and they're not going anywhere. John, anything to say about it?
I absolutely love it. From the value perspective, I actually have him 7th on my board, my 2nd wide receiver, so that lines up perfectly. I'm right there with you. He's, from a fantasy perspective, he's one of the guys I'm heavily targeting, especially as we dwindle into the later stages of the first round. If you can get him past 8, I think that's a very, very good pick. But I love him here at 7. Each year, he's increased his receptions and receiving yards. As you say, PPR monster last year, led the league in receptions at 125. And he plays in the most efficient passing offense in the league. So Michael Thomas, very good pick at 1.7. Last year, I loved it because I would get McCaffrey. If I was picking later, I'd get McCaffrey and then just get Michael Thomas right at the turn there. And that was like one of my favorite tandems to kind of double up on last year. But I love it. Michael Thomas at 1.7.
Championship team right there. Yeah, I mean, especially what you said too. I'm going to quickly just jump in. Trending upwards every year. That's what you look for. That's what you look for. That just means more and more and more confidence from Breeze, from Peyton, from the whole team, from everyone. He's a leader now. I love it. Anyways, 8th pick, John. That's you.
8th pick. Do you go running back here, like David Johnson or Melvin Gordon, or you keep the wide receiver trend going? But I think I'm going to go with the latter. I'm going to go with Odell Beckham. This might be a little bit of a surprise, but I love that potential with him in that Cleveland offense with Freddie Kitchens and Baker Mayfield. Of course, injuries have kind of hindered Beckham's production over the past 2 seasons. He's missed 16 games during that span. But even with a lot of mouths to feed in Cleveland, I think he's going to be the centerpiece of that offense. I think he's going to go off. Last time he played a full 16-game season, 2016, he finished as wide receiver 4. I just love that. I think a change of scenery will do him good too. I think Cleveland, that offense is going to absolutely explode this season. I think they'll emerge as maybe a top 5 fantasy offense, if not even higher than that. And a change of scenery with his boy Jarvis Landry opposite side, I just think he's going to be a force to reckon with this season.
That's probably the biggest surprise so far of the draft. Like it's always, for me, it's a little nerve-wracking when a wide receiver goes to a new team, right? You got to build the chemistry with your quarterback, with your team. It's always a little nerve-wracking. However, when you're going from Grandpa Manning to young sport Baker, like look at what OBJ has done with frickin' Eli Manning, Six Flags grandpa out there trying to dance his way to one victory. Like, and OBJ still was an elite receiver, like just like Nuke, quarterback proof. But you're gonna give him one of the top up and coming quarterbacks on one of the top up and coming offenses on one of the top up and coming teams in the NFL. Very good pick. Like OBJ could be that big surprise. Now, for me, I do have him 5th in my wide receiver rankings. So, like, for me, I would personally take Davante and Julio more just because the track record they have with their already established quarterback. For me, it's so hard to be risky with the first round. Like, you almost just want that value, you know, like or that consistency, excuse me. OBJ's pretty risky, but high risk, high reward. That's what you get CMC and Michael Thomas last year. That's championship-bound team. If you end up getting OBJ this year and then seeing if you can fall in the second round and get one of the running backs that are still there, like maybe Le'Veon Bell sneaks through that late, or maybe, you know, Dalvin Cook or Josh Jacobs is sitting there, that could be a solid team. You could have 2 very good players. So I do like that OBJ pick. It's just scary, right? Isn't it a little scary when a receiver goes to a new team with a new quarterback?
Of course, yeah. You never know how that rapport is going to be, especially Cleveland. I mean, they already have Jarvis Landry, and then a loaded backfield, David Njoku at tight end. Like, there's a lot of mouths to feed, as I said, but we'll see. I think Odell is going to own that market share over there. And
it was good too. Like, you see, one thing that scared me was, I don't want to say OBJ is ever a diva because it might just be the media putting him out. He's himself and he has fun, and that's great. I love that. You know what I mean? But we are out of time. But real quick on OBJ, he's there. You know, voluntary workouts, he's there. He's focused on winning, and that's what matters most. One thing also about OBJ, though, is someone else in that Cleveland offense that I really love that's now going to get a whole reduction in his volume, but it's Antonio Callaway. Man, I loved him last year. I thought he was going to be great coming into this year, but OBJ
I'm on my team.
All right, so that was the 8th pick. OBJ, a reach in my opinion, but I love it. 9th pick. Sure. 9th pick, we're going to go. Do we keep the wide receiver trend going? Do we go with one of the running backs? There's a certain guy that I want to get, and honestly, normally I would probably get 9. If Davante Adams would have been taken 8, I would not have gotten Davante Adams 9, and I'll tell you who I would get at 9, probably at the 11th pick. But number 9's got to be Davante Adams. Like, he was wide receiver 1 last year. He's getting, in my opinion, a resurgence of Aaron Rodgers, right? I think Aaron Rodgers is not going to be like, so last year it just, something was in the air in Green Bay. Whether it was Mike McCarthy and Rodgers didn't get together or those reports were untrue. I don't even know what it was. I didn't dive deep into it, but the eyeball test showed that Green Bay was in a flux last year. They had to get rid of McCarthy. Aaron Rodgers wasn't his normal self. He didn't have that awareness and that scramble and that throw, 10 seconds after the ball was snapped because he'd been running around. He finally whips it 85 yards down. He didn't have that. But out of all that, Davante Adams was still the wide receiver 1 in PPR last year. He was a beast. Now they got a new coach coming in, which scares me, right? I'm not the biggest fan of getting players that have new coaches, but it's still the Packers. And it seems like the Packers are damn near new coach proof. Like Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. You can put anyone coaching him. You can put Macaulay Culkin out there trying to order a cheese pizza, coaching this Green Bay Packers team, and Aaron Rodgers will still be a beast. So I'm okay with Davante Adams. For me, I would actually probably took him 8. OBJ got 8, and that's why we do these mock drafts, because you need to be able to think on your feet. That's great for this 9th team. If you're sitting there at the 9th pick, you get Davante Adams, and if he's still there, you get him. I love like the offense. I think it's going to be better with Aaron Jones as a full-time running back. I don't think they're going to be worried about will it be Jamal Williams or will it be Aaron Jones. Like, it's just going to be Aaron Jones. Their offensive line is better. Their defense is better. They had a great draft, in my opinion. I like the Packers a lot this year. So, again, with that theme of trying to take teams that are going to score a lot of points and be a winning team, following that trend, I'll take Davante Adams all day. Anything to say about that, John?
Yeah, just when you're Aaron Rodgers' number 1 target, like you said, the new coaching regime and all that, it doesn't matter what else is going on. When you're Aaron Rodgers' top guy, you're going to produce, and obviously Adams did that last year, and he should do very much of the same this year. It's so hard, I think, after Hopkins and Thomas to kind of sort out those remaining wide receivers, Jones, Adams, and Beckham. But as we see here, Beckham goes, and then Adams is right off the board after.
Yep.
Alrighty, so with the 10th pick in the first round, I'm going to try and get my bearings quick.
I like it. So we've had, just to recap while he looks over there, we've had Zeke number 1, Christian McCaffrey number 2, Alvin Kamara number 3, Saquon Barkley number 4. First 4 picks, all running backs. 5th pick, DeAndre Hopkins, the first wide receiver off the board. Back to the running back train with the 6th pick, Todd Gurley. And then 7, 8, and 9, we went back to the wide receiver train, going Michael Thomas, Odell Beckham Jr., Davante Adams. That right there gets us to the 10th pick. We've had 4 receivers, 5 running backs, and the 10th pick is, John?
I'm going to go with Melvin Gordon here. I'm not the biggest Melvin Gordon guy, but, I mean, he's been on a roll the past 3 years, finishing as a top 8 receiver, just consistent. You know what you're getting from him. Austin Eckler, of course, is kind of emerging as their pass-catching back, but I think Gordon still should see some work in that department. It's kind of weird for me, kind of a weird pick for me. I don't think I've ever actually had Gordon on any of my teams, just thinking off the top of my head, but just sitting there at the 10th pick, he's a volume running back, and those are kind of fading at this point. So I think that's kind of more of a priority than going for a wide receiver, although you can still get one of these remaining top wide receivers at the turn with this 10th pick.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. The 10th pick is always, there's like a plethora of players that have the potential to be number 1s, but might not be that great. Like, it's always kind of scary. But you're right. I mean, Gordon's my 6th running back, right? We got him as the 6th running back drafted in this mock draft. It kind of fits him personal. He's on a contract year. If anyone ever wants to believe in something like that, just a little extra food for thought. But it does scare me, Eckler coming in. Like, Melvin Gordon was great, like consistent, but big consistent in that pass catching. And like you said, he definitely should still see a lot of balls through the air. Like, he's good enough where he should be getting those. But it's kind of scary with Austin Eckler. Like, Melvin Gordon before last year, I would have taken him in the top 7 picks easily. Guaranteed. Doesn't matter. This year, this is about where I'd be taking him. Gordon in the 10th, 11th pick, kind of even battling James Conner. Like, in my opinion, is James Conner going to be better than Melvin Gordon this year? James Conner could just completely fill that Pittsburgh role of, workhorse running back. Whether it was D'Angelo Williams or Le'Veon Bell or whomever it was for the last 15 years, if you were the running back for Pittsburgh, you were a beast. You know what I mean? So it's a little scary drafting Gordon and Conner. One of those two are going to be great. One of those two might not be great. But Gordon's a good pick. With the 10th pick, you definitely can't go wrong with him being your running back. Well, as you said, what'd you say? He finished top 8 running back the last 3 years?
Correct.
So that's just consistently. Go talk to Bob Long on Twitter if you guys don't follow him. He'll tell you all about consistency. That's a good pick. So that's the 10th pick. Let's get to the 11th. We have 2 more. We're flying through the show. I love it. The first episode, the Red Zone Report Fantasy Podcast, is a lot of fun. 11th pick, though. Man, it's kind of hard to pick this guy over Julio Jones. Normally, I probably would be picking Julio Jones here right now. However, we're doing a mock draft, and I want to talk about this guy. I want to share my idea of why I think he should be a number 1 draft pick. A first-round draft pick, excuse me. The 11th pick, I'm taking Travis Kelce. All right. Yeah, and the reason I'm taking Kelce,
I have a feeling you're going to be doing this at some point in this draft. So
I had to throw a wrench in there. Like that's just who I am. When everyone zigs, I try to zag. Tyreek Hill, if he plays, this is not how I would do this. If Tyreek Hill plays this year, Travis Kelce is not a first-round draft pick. If Tyreek Hill doesn't play this year, Travis Kelce needs to be a number one draft pick or a first-round draft pick. I was a guest on CSD Fantasy's podcast, if you feel familiar with him. He's a Swedish guy. He actually lives in Atlanta now. He's a sweet guy from Sweden. And I went on about it on that show, and I was like, look, man, if you get rid of Hill, you get rid of Hunt, this offense, like Pat Mahomes isn't a bad quarterback. Andy Reid isn't a bad coach. He's going to make sure that this offense is still striving almost at the same pace that they were last year, even without Hill. Sure, you add McCole Hardman in. Sammy Watkins might be getting the uptick. Everyone on Twitter is loving to talk about Sammy and McCole Hardman, all these. Spare me, dude. Kelce's going to end up getting 30% of the freaking passes. That's going to end up leading to 115 receptions, 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns. Mark it in the books right now. He's going to lead the league in touchdowns if Tyreek Hill doesn't play. Guarantee it. Guarantee it. So, if that's the case, why would he not be a first-round draft pick? I'm not saying you need to get him over Nuke. I'm not saying you need to get him over OBJ, Thomas Adams. Probably don't even have to get him over Julio. If Julio's still on your board with the 11th pick, you might want to go with him. But, again, I just want to kind of talk up and bring up the reason. Like, Andy Reid is going to make sure Kelce gets that ball. Patrick Mahomes throws the ball with his eyes closed better than Eli Manning does with his eyes open, maybe even a third eye. Like this offense, the sticking to the theme, this offense is going to score a lot of points. So get players from this offense, especially if their top two volume guys are gone. That means someone's going to step up, and it's going to be the fan favorite, Travis Kelce. But this is a reach. So, John, what do you got to say about it?
I'm indifferent about it. I like your approach, especially because there's such a huge drop off. I think especially after Kelce, but after like the top 3 or 4 tight ends, there's a huge drop off that I think it's very important to get one of them pretty early. And I mean, here at 1.11 at the turn, I mean, I don't hate it. I don't definitely.
It's where Rob Gronkowski was going a few years ago. You know what I mean? Like, true. And I'm not saying that Kelce's going to be as good as Rob Gronkowski, but he's the potential. And what you said was specifically correct. Like after Ertz, after Kelce, that's about it. You can roll the dice on Ebron again. You can go with George Kittle and hope that there's not too many mouths to feed in San Francisco. Like you can go with these guys, but those are the two, right? Those are the two tight ends, and those are, in my opinion, maybe even more important for your team than getting the 5th or 6th best wide receiver, because the 5th or 6th best wide receiver might be just as good as the 8th and 9th best wide receiver. But the first tight end will be nowhere near the 4th tight end. You know what I mean? So if you're going to get a tight end, if you're not going to wait on one for like Austin Hooper with the last pick in your draft, get Kelce in the first round if you're around the turn, because then you still have a good chance of getting a running back receiver with your second pick. I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep going, brother.
No, you're good. But yeah, I like it. I like where your head's at with this. You might be onto something. But I guess to round out this first round, kind of made it easy on me. I'm going to go Julio Jones. Just another consistent stud that we've seen perform at a high level each and every year. I think a top 5 wide receiver the past 4 years, even without touchdowns, which is remarkable because he's just it's all the receptions and all the receiving yards he gets. If he can go for 5 touchdowns this year, I mean, it's over. That's a championship caliber pick, especially at 12 when you're about to be right on the clock again and in a position to get one of these remaining running backs who are still on the board.
Yeah, I mean, Julio Jones is consistently one of the best wide receivers with consistently no touchdowns. And it's crazy. He didn't get his first touchdown, till week 8 last year, right? So of those first 7 weeks, he had 4 games with over 100 yards, 4 games with 9 receptions or more, 4 games with 12 or more targets. 3 of the first 5 games he was a little bit lackluster. But one of those games that he didn't have 100 yards, he had 96. The other 2, 64 and 63. 64 and 62, excuse me. But then week 8 hit, 121 yards and a touchdown. Week 9, 107 yards and a touchdown. Week 10, 118 yards and a touchdown. Week 11, 147 yards, no touchdowns. No touchdowns in week 12. Week 13 comes, 106 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 14, 82 yards and a touchdown. Week 15, 28 yards but a touchdown. Week 16, 138 yards and a touchdown. He literally had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 touchdowns in the final 8 weeks of the season.
Actually, I didn't even realize that. That's absurd.
So, exactly. Getting him with the 12th pick, if he could just roll that over, not to say, Calvin Ridley will actually probably play a little bit more role this year, and they're probably going to try to implement more of Devontae Freeman and whatnot. But I don't care what you do. You know Julio's going to get his 10 targets a game damn near, which should probably lead up to 100 yards. And if he can keep doing what he did last year at the end of the season, going into this season, if he gets 10 touchdowns, watch out. That's your wide receiver 1 right there. And you just got him with the 12th pick. You are all about the value in this mock. I love it, bro. I love it. So that was the mock, though. That's great, man. That's a lot of fun. First episode of the Red Zone Report Fantasy Podcast. John and I are happy that y'all listened. We're going to be putting out a ton more. We're going to try to do one every week. That's the goal. Life happens. So maybe we'll do 2 one week and not do any the next week. We'll see how it goes. Just make sure you're following us on Twitter at RZR Fantasy Podcast. I believe it's a Twitter handle. Mine is at Nick Faber NFL. John, what's yours?
Mine is at John Valencia BF. John with no H.
John with no H. So make sure you're following us. I'm quite positive we're putting this out on Spreaker, out on iTunes, out on SoundCloud, out on YouTube, I don't even know, but we're putting it out everywhere, man. We're making sure everyone and anyone can listen. So, if your friend doesn't like fantasy football, have them listen. Have them kind of, start to kind of get into this great game that we've been playing here. It's been taken over the last 5 years, and we're going to keep it rolling here at the RZR Fantasy Podcast. So one more time, I appreciate y'all listening. John, if everyone wants to kind of see some of your writing, I know you're writing with another website as well. Is that true?
Yes, sir. Pro Football Network. I'm actually covering the Houston Texans for them this year. So I'm excited for that.
All Texans fans, make sure you go check that out. Check us out on Twitter. Follow everything we do. We just love talking football. We talk draft. We talk fantasy. We talk NFL. You can probably catch us on a good day, and you'll catch us talking high school. We used to talk AAF. We'll probably be talking XFL in the next year, even though I don't want to. It's inevitable. I'm going to be. So thank you all again for listening. Thanks, RZR, for having us be the hosts of this great fantasy podcast on this great website. Make sure you're checking out LA Red Zone Report. They are a great website that actually focuses, I believe, mainly on the Saints. There's a Saints podcast as well from our website here. So we're doing everything. Check us out. Check everyone out, man. Just read and like. A lot of things have been happening in Twitter and fantasy this year. Has been a lot of negativity. Let's 86 the negativity. Let's bring back the fun. Everyone's got their own opinions. Don't hate on it. Ask why they have that opinion. Thanks for listening. Y'all have a great day.